Got one more person coming in. Sweet. Welcome in, Allie. I was just saying that this session will be recorded, so if you don't want to be seen, feel free to keep your camera off. But at any point, if you have questions, feel free to unmute or put your question in the chat. Delaney is with Mississippi Park Connection. She is our AmeriCorps member, and she'll be monitoring the chat. So she can let me know if I'm missing anybody's question or will stop me whenever. But again, if you have a question, feel free to unmute and ask. Yeah, let's dive right in. So today we'll be talking about a little bit of background of why we're doing this survey in the first place. So we'll talk about MPC, which is Mississippi Park Connection, NPS, the National Park Service, and the Plant for the Future campaign. Then we'll touch on some survey goals, what surveying will look like, and then begin with some tree ID and anatomy. And I know I asked like the group before this, but by show of hands, and you can use the little raise hand function, how many of you have identified or surveyed trees before? Nice. Okay, so we got like 4 people. That's sweet. Well, I'm happy you're here today. We are going to just learn the basics of surveying, and it's good to know what we're starting with. And we'll cover all the things that you need to know for this survey. But jumping into it, I'll just let you know who we are. So Mississippi Park Connection, we are the official friends group to the National Mississippi River and Recreation Area. So how many of y'all knew that you have a national park just running through the Twin Cities area? We co-manage a lot of their programming. I love the hands. Yes, I'm glad y'all knew. We co-manage their environmental stewardship, community youth engagement, and public programming. So we are very hands-on with what happens in the national park. And we also do a lot of tree plantings. The National Park Service, or the national park that I'm talking about, is the 72-mile stretch of the Mississippi River that runs from Dakota, Ramsey, the cities in Anoka County, down to the Twin Cities, and then even further down to Hastings area in Dakota County. And it's about 54,000 acres total, but NPS only manages about 64 of those acres, and that's at Coldwater Spring, great park. And so the way we manage the rest of this park is through partnership. So we partner a lot with different counties, cities to do environmental stewardship to take care of the river. And so here's just a map of our lovely river. I can show you, oh my gosh, take a second. I love the like laser point feature on this. But our park starts up here in Ramsey and Dayton, then goes all the way down to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then down to Hastings, Prescott area. And so actually a lot of our tree plantings were throughout the corridor, but really we're focused in the St. Paul area, down here at Spring Lake Park Reserve, and there were a couple spots also up in Anoka County. And so the context of our plantings is majority floodplain forest. So floodplain forests make up a large part of our park, and they are exactly what they sound like. They're forests found in areas where it floods. So these forests are dominated by silver maple, green ash, American elm, cottonwood, and they contribute to like major ecosystem services to our society. And so they help filter pollutants and runoff, improve water quality, and are critical for controlling erosion and helping buffer us from catastrophic flooding. And so these floodplain forests are facing multiple threats. They, in particular, climate change are changing our flood regimes. And so our state is getting warmer and wetter. So our floods are going to get more intense. Our droughts are going to get more intense. we have invasive species coming in and attacking some of our native species, and we're seeing a failure of regeneration. So we're not seeing many cottonwoods regenerate, which is really scary because they're one of our major keystone species that exist along the floodplain forest. And to talk a little bit more about the invasive species, what's currently happening with our forest right now is emerald ash borer is spreading into our forest and killing a lot of our ash. And ash make up nearly a quarter of the trees along our national park. And so this is a really big deal, and our land managers have noticed it and want to take preemptive actions to plant trees and be able to replace all the ash that are going to die over the next 5 to 10 years. And thus, Plant for the Future was born. So this was a big tree planting campaign between 2017 and 2021 with the goal to plant 15,000 trees throughout the corridor. And we did it. We planted about 15,481 trees. And according to our records, about 6,000 of those had tubes or fencing, some protection around it, and also some way to find it. And so those are the trees that we'll be surveying this spring and fall. And so, what is the purpose of this survey? We are 3 years out from Plant for the Future, and we want to know if the restoration projects that we did are actually making a difference, and if those trees are getting a chance to grow and maintain the canopy that's quickly disappearing. And so the major goals of this survey are to geotag the species for more accurate mapping, calculate survival, identify if certain species are surviving more than others, review site conditions. So see if these sites need replanting, if there's invasive species moving into them like buckthorn or reed canary grass, get a general idea of the vegetation around the trees, and if we are seeing significant signs of herbivory, either from deer or from beaver. And then also, we're going to remove any of the tubes that are on dead trees, so we're just keeping that out of the environment. So jumping right into scheduling, if you're committed to being a tree surveyor, the schedule will look like volunteering Mondays and Fridays, starting at 12 and ending around 4 p.m. And that is if the survey takes up that whole 4 hours. So we'll be starting April 1st, though we won't be surveying on the April 5th as I'll be out of town. But again, surveys Mondays and Fridays. We'll be surveying starting in April, going till May and June, or until we start encountering wasps. So tree tubes are an amazing home for trees, but they also are great homes for wasps. And so as soon as we start encountering wasps, we're going to take a break from surveying because I don't want any of you just stung by wasps while trying to look at these trees. So we'll probably resume surveying then mid-September, going through October and then early December. And so the ideal amount of volunteers I would like to have out on these surveys are 4 to 7. So that means there were like 15, or there's 14 people in here now. So that means not everybody has to be out on Mondays, Fridays, throughout the whole season. If you can come make it to a couple or every other or every 2 weeks, that would be awesome. It would just be really helpful to have a couple people out there with me because it does take a while to survey when you're only doing it like 1 or 2 people at a time. We won't survey if there's a holiday or if there's bad weather. So that includes like thunderstorms, extreme heat, cold weather. If it's raining, we'll likely cancel. If it's a light like rain shower, we'll probably still go out. If your device is not waterproof, we do have tablets that you can use. Otherwise, if you do want to use your phone for the survey, we can always like double pack your phone in like a sealable sandwich bag. When I've done other field surveys, that has worked well enough for me. We will meet on site, and so you'll get an email a couple days before detailing where the survey will be and where to meet. And then surveys will last about 4 hours. So definitely bring snacks and waters, and I suggest eating an early lunch. Oof, okay. So I'm just gonna take a break from talking and just let you absorb this information. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll just take a moment here, take a breath, drink some water. Feeling good? I can give it a couple more seconds. I see one thumbs up. I saw one thumbs up. Okay. Okay. Sweet. Sounds good. I will keep moving on then. All right. So, um, without further ado, let's just take a peek at what the survey even looks like. If you want to scan the QR code, you can check it out on your phone if you have Survey 123 downloaded on your phone. If not, I can also just open up the link and we can just look at it together. I'll just hop over to the other screen. Ooh. Oop, can y'all see that? Yep. Yep. Okay. Perfect. Don't mind the ridiculous amount of tabs I have open. All right. Going through this survey, pretty straightforward. I mean, to start with, we want to know who's surveying. This will just help us with our record keeping and like if we want to fact check or if anybody's making like maybe a small mistake consistently, we can like just reach out to them and let them know what's up. The first entry, I would like y'all to put your full name and then in parentheses initials. After that first entry, feel free to just put your initials after that. Um, After you enter who you are, you're going to enter what park you're at. So it's a drop down menu. I'm just going to pick one at random, Crosby Farm Regional Park. For the GPS location, if you're taking data on your phone, you want to make sure that the app has your location permissions on so that it knows where you are. For when you're taking GPS locations, I try to put my phone as close to the tree as possible, the tree or the tube, to make sure it's just getting as accurate of data as possible. I know it's still going to be a meter or two off in error, but it'll just help us with our record keeping. Then you'll hop down once you're at your tree and look at what protection the tree has on. Shoot, I think I had a picture to show you all about what an actual tree tube looks like. Um, we'll see some in the probably in the next slide, but it's basically this white kind of plastic looking tube. You might have seen, actually, how many people have seen a tree tube before? Okay, Malia, right on. Okay, a couple people. All right. So for anybody who hasn't seen one before, it is basically this white plastic looking tube that is just standing up out of nowhere in a very natural space. And there's also that's what we use for protection. They're basically like little greenhouses for the trees because it keeps them protected from a rivery and it keeps them nice and kind of warm and moist in the tube. And it also allows for sunlight to pass through it so trees can photosynthesize. Um, but you can see there's a couple options. And actually, Linda, are you raising your hand? Or do you have a question?
Yeah, just saying I had seen a tube before.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Yeah, so there's different types of protection. Each tree will have a stake and a tube. Um, that is one form of protection. We've also fenced our trees before. A mat, I'm just curious about how many mulch mats are out there. So mulch mats are, they look like almost like a plastic covering that goes around the ground that's around the tree, and this is to help keep moisture in. Um, so we'll look at if the tree has a mat, or if it's a shrub, it might have a shrub cage. This basically looks like just like a green mesh fencing that goes around our shrubs to save them from some herbivory. And we'll also note if we find a tree that might have like a pink flag on it or metal tag. Those are likely one of the trees that we've planted. And so we'll note if those trees don't have protection. Next, we'll look at if the tree is alive or dead. I'll go into this in greater detail of how to tell these little trees are dead, because sometimes when it's wintertime and it's dormant, it gets a little bit dicey if you know it's alive or not. I'll skip over tree height for right now. I'm still working on a sampling method that I want us to do for these surveys, so I'll circle back to that at our field session. So now we're looking at what species of tree. So when I clicked Crosby Farm Regional Park as the example park that we're doing, this list pops up to give you a list of the trees and shrubs that have been planted at that site. So you can use that to kind of help narrow down what tree species what is the species of the tree that you're looking at. So this one's kind of a long list, and we'll go further into how to identify trees towards the end of this presentation, and then for sure next week at the field session. But just a general overview of what you're looking at this survey. So you'll click random species, and then next is onto tree photos. So this is really important for volunteers. I am looking for one just like clear photo of the leaf, the bud, and the leaf scar, and the bark. And I'll go over those in further detail in the next slides as well. But having a clear photo is so important for us because it helps us verify what species that y'all are looking at. You guys are going to be great tree surveyors, but it's always good to just have somebody double check your data. And then these last section or site photo is something that I'll take when we start the surveys, as well as the site conditions. But last section is tree condition notes. And this, I'll let y'all just read that portion because there's a couple different things that I want you to take note of. And these are all things that we've seen out in the field. But yeah, just goes into seeing what the tree might have been going through that could contribute to if it's alive or dead or not. Sweet.
I think there's a question, Marielle.
Oh, yeah.
Paloma.
Oh, yeah. Paloma, do you have a question? Ooh. Do we? If you're speaking, I can't hear. Maybe you could put your question in the chat. That's okay. Oh, in the chat. Okay. Sorry. Rainbow growth. Yes. Yes. So rainbow shaped growth. Yeah. I realized I probably could have said like parabola or like upside down U-shaped. Basically, we've had trees where when we pulled the tube off, they have grown straight and then curved right around and have been growing down and then like out of the tube through the bottom. So I just want you to make note of any weird shaped growing patterns. Oh, gotcha. Okay, no worries, no worries. But yeah, any weird shaped growing patterns on these trees. Okay. I'm gonna hop back over to our slideshow. Can everybody see the slides? Sweet. Okay. Sounds good. Oh my gosh. And of course, it was the page that I meant to show. So yes. Tree tube, mulch mat, shrub cage. So those are different protections. All right. Now, moving on. All right, let's dig in a little bit more to the survey process. So we'll be out there next week. You'll find yourself in front of a tube or shrub cage, and you're looking at a baby tree that could be alive, could be dead. I'll throw it out to y'all. What are some things that might tell you if a shrub or tree is alive? Feel free to shout it out or put it in the chat. But what do you see on live plant?
If the twigs are bendy and don't break.
Yeah, right on. Megan put green in the chat also.
Buds.
Buds, heck yeah. Still in the ground, not, oh, did I read that right? Not rotted. Yes. Right. So basically, you guys got a lot of them. Is it alive? So you might want to look at the buds and if there is leaf growth. If you have nice green leaves on there, that baby's alive. Bend test, Allie, you mentioned that. That's perfect. So when trees have live limbs, they have a little bit of flexibility to them. So if you're in front of a tree and you have a twig in front of you, if you want to gently just bend it, if it's able to bend and make a little like arc, that is alive. Because dead matter will basically just bend. You'll start bending it and it'll snap. And then finally, we have this nice scratch test. And so some of the pictures kind of illustrate that. Ooh, there we go. And basically, it's super easy. If you're in front of a tree, you don't know if it's dead or alive. It doesn't have good buds on it or leaf growth. It bent a little bit, but then snapped. You can basically use your fingernail to scratch a part of the tree. I usually try to do at the base and then at the top of the little tree to look and see if both the top, bottom, or the base and the crown of the tree are still alive. And so if you see green and moist tissue, that is going to be alive. If you see brown and dry tissue, that is dead. And then white and in between, I still list it as alive and I keep the tube on it because I'd rather bet for the trees than against them. And there is such thing as some zombie trees and some of the trees that we have at one of our experimental plots where basically the tree, when it was planted, we surveyed it the next year and it looked like it was dead. It had basically dried up, looked like it was all gone. But then the very next year, it had shoots coming up from the base. So I'm always hopeful that some of these baby trees, even if the main tree dies, it'll put out some shoots and still survive. So I mentioned this in the survey, but when you're collecting data, you're in front of your tree, you just determined the species, and now you're taking photos of it to show that this is what species it is. We want to make sure that we're taking verifiable photos. So when y'all have been out and taking photos, what have been some ways that you've been able to like focus in on those little details? Or what have you done to take some wildlife photos? If you've taken them. I could start. I've held like a tree twig steady. If it's moving in the wind, I've kind of pulled it down. Oh, Megan, thank you. So you've put your hands behind the plant so your camera focuses. Nice. Paloma brings a ruler, a clipboard, and a black sheet of white paper. Yes! Actually, that's what we're going to be doing. Yes. Yeah. So those are all great answers. I see Whitney's typing. I might wait a second. But yeah, you guys got a lot of them. Oh, just gonna say your hand. Right on. Having that backdrop is so prime, so important. Here's a couple of the other tips that I have for y'all. Really take your time with these photos. These photos are basically going to help verify if the species you collected was correct or not. And if we're not able to verify it, it's going to go in the unknown category, which for data purposes isn't that helpful for us. So if you include those nice photos, even if you might have chosen a different wrong species, if we're able to correct it, that is awesome for us. And so we also suggest when you're taking photos, ask for help from a buddy. This I've done several times from the field in the field. If it's really windy and I'm trying to hold a phone and also the twig, but I don't have anything as a background, it's nice to just have somebody with you to maybe like provide just like an arm sleeve or like a clipboard to put in the background so that you're able to focus on those photos. And having that solid backdrop, using a finger or like another object to really put next to the small object has forced my phone camera to like focus in on, say, my finger. But then it also focuses in on that like little detail on the bud. So I've also had some good luck with that. Okay, a quick pop quiz. What are the 4 things that I asked you to take photos of? We'll see. If you don't get this, that's also okay. Okay, bud scars, we got 1. Leaf, nice. Oh. Bark, yes, nice. And I'm gonna count bud and bud and leaf scars. They're gonna be in the similar area. Sweet. All right. And then a final tip. Flash can also sometimes help during like if we're surveying out later, like in twilight times, like flash can sometimes be helpful in catching those little details. All right, on to the fun part, identification. So a big thing about identification will be leaves and twigs. Both of these are going to be huge helps and probably the main things that you're looking at when you're going through that dichotomous key of ID in your head. Oh, how many people know what a dichotomous key is? Delaney, nice. Okay. So about half of folks. A dichotomous key is just a series of paired phrases or descriptions that kind of help you go through a list and classify what species you're looking at. So, for example, if you're looking at one pairing might be, are the buds green or red? And you're looking at a silver maple. Oh, this might be tricky because sometimes they're green and red. Okay, different one. If you're looking at stout or thin shaped twigs, if you go with stout, you'll go with probably in the oak direction, while if you go with slender, you'll probably go more towards the maples. Yes, so that is my poor example of a dichotomous key. We'll talk a little bit more about that next at the field session. But okay, So for the people who have looked at trees before, what are some things that you've looked at to identify a tree? I'm telling y'all, interactive. Your slideshows. Thank you, Megan. Bark, canopy shape, right on. Bark, a lot, yes. Plus leaves, nice. Fruit too, yeah. So I will say with the baby trees that we're looking at, I think the biggest things will probably be leaves, barks, and twigs, and persistent leaves. Ooh, that is a good one. Because oaks, if the leaves are still on in like December, mid-December, that is most likely an oak. But yeah, so here are some of those key features that we're going to be looking at. So we're going to look at leaves, twigs, all the things that make up a twig, and bark. And basically, we're going to use all of our almost all of our senses. Don't go eating any of the leaves. That will not help you. But we definitely want to use our sense of sight, touch, and like smell even. Like black cherry or things in the cherry family, when you break a twig, often smell like cyanide, and that's one of their chemical defenses. And that's also just like a key way to know that you're looking at something in the prunus family. So, yeah, I'll move on. All right, so this slide, I basically want to familiarize you with some leaf terminology and morphology. So terms that like I might use in the field are ooh, yeah, I highlighted them. So lobate, serrate, or double serrate. These are just, oh, and actually sinuate or a sinus. So when you're looking at the margins of a leaf, you want to just take in those little details because they can help determine what species it might be. So like lobate, or with something with those deep sinuses. So deep sinuses like right here, is likely going to be an oak tree. Something that's double serrate is super characteristic of American elms. And then serrate or toothed, is generally pretty common actually overall in a lot of our leaves. Like hackberry and black cherry both have serrate leaves. I also want to mention the terms pinnate and palmate. So pinnate is basically when the veins are coming out of the midrib or the midvein of the leaf. Actually, yeah, perfect. The midrib is the one that goes along here. So the veins are coming out in a pinnate fashion. Palmate is when it radiates out from one point. So you can see that a lot with maple leaves. And then parts of the leaf, petiole, I might mention a little bit later, but that's basically the thing that connects the leaf to a twig. Margins, tip, yeah, those are the main things of a leaf. I also wanted to mention the simple and compound leaf. And so, sorry. Okay, just going through what a simple and compound leaf is. So simple leaf, just a leaf, exactly what you think. It comes out from the branch. Compound leaves get a little bit trickier because overall, this just looks like a twig with a bunch of simple leaves on it, but this is actually one leaf by itself. And you can tell the difference between a compound leaf and a simple leaf by looking at where the bud is. And so on this diagram, you can see there's no buds in between these leaves. or leaflets, I should say. All the little leaves on the big leaf are leaflets. So you'll look at where the bud is, and if it's only on the branch or only on this part, you can know that this makes up just one leaf. And compound leaves are pretty interesting because they're kind of like a cheap temporary branch. Like you can put a lot of photosynthetic material out without having to invest in the sugars to produce like the woody part. Compound leaves are pretty sweet, but they're not that common. So if you see a compound leaf, there's a high chance that it's going to be an ash, black walnut, a type of hickory, a Kentucky coffee tree, or a blatternut. And that's a type of shrub. Or elderberries. Elderberries are another shrub that have compound leaves. Next up, we'll talk about buds and bud arrangements. So another question for y'all. What is a bud? Does anybody know? And it's okay if not. I also just started really learning about what a bud is in the last like year or so. Any ideas? Want to take a crack at it? Oh, nice. Isn't it what holds new leaves? Wait, did you? Yes, that time you guessed. Yeah. It can be a protective shell. Okay, I'll hop into it. Ooh, let's go, Blake. Okay, cool. Yeah, undifferentiated tissue. Exactly. So, a bud is that. So a bud is kind of like the tree embryo. It is the very baby part is undeveloped. It's an embryo. It's undifferentiated. So depending on the hormones that the tree sends it and that it senses from the outside, it can become a leaf, a flower, or a new twig. And there's different types of buds within that too. There's the terminal bud. So that's right up here at the very end. And then there's some lateral buds. And knowing buds can be so key for identification because trees have all different types of buds. And so it's just ultimately, it's kind of like its own, I don't know, calling card. Like once you start to know the buds, you can really like lock in on like at least what family it is, if not what species it is. And so there's also different arrangements of buds. And sorry, I have my notes in one slideshow, but I think it didn't update. So I'm going to take a peek at some of my notes for a second. But buds are either opposite or alternate. There's actually another, like 2 more that I know of, like sub opposite and world, but we'll just focus on opposite and alternate for today. Majority of trees are alternate. So one of the identification hacks that we can use is if we do see an opposite tree, we can use these 2 acronyms to see, to kind of narrow down what family or what species that tree might be. And so we have madcap horse. This is one that I learned in school. It's maple, ash, dogwood, and Caprifoliaceae, which is a family that has honeysuckles and viburnums. And then horse is horse chestnut. So I will say we probably won't, we at MPC haven't planted any honeysuckles or horse chestnuts. And so you'll mostly use the mad dog and cap for viburnums in that. I've also seen ham-lived. So that's honeysuckle, ash, maple, lilac, viburnum, elderberry, and dogwood. And so we've planted all of those, except for lilac, I believe. I don't think we've planted lilac. And there's a whole interesting reason why there's majority alternate, but I'll save some of that biology for next week because we're, I think, running out of time a little bit. So we have 2 example pictures. which one is opposite and which one's alternate? Also bonus if you can guess the species. All right, Megan, we got left is opposite, right is alternate. Yes, yes. Perfect. Left opposite, right alternate. Nice. And yeah, Paloma, that is a cottonwood on the right. Honestly, I would be surprised if anybody got the one on the left. But I love this one on the left. It is so interesting. So that is an elderberry. It is opposite, and one of the key identifiers of elderberry is these like lenticels up here, which is a perfect segue into leaf scars, lenticels, and pith. All right, so this is just some more terminology that'll be helpful for y'all. So leaf scars, kind of like buds, are kind of specific to species, and so being able to know what a leaf scar looks like will also help in your identification journey. And so I'll show, so leaf scars also are basically the marks that are left after a leaf falls off a twig. And so we'll look at these two leaf scars. They are so cute. They're so goofy. They're little like smiley faces. On the left, we have Juglans cinerea, which is butternut. And on the right, we have Juglans nigra, which is black walnut. And so you could tell some of the differences between these scars, even though they're the same genus. This one's more heart-shaped, and then has two buds right above it, circular buds. This one is a little bit more triangular shaped, and has that silly unibrow. So good. Unibrow. So you could tell that like even though they're in the same genus, which is the closest thing to being same species, they still have that kind of distinctive looking leaf scar. Next, we have lenticels, which are the pores on the tree bark that allows for gas exchange. And actually, all trees have lenticels. It's just some are more noticeable than others. For example, cherries, birches, elderberries all have larger, more pronounced lenticels. And as you can see on here, this is a catalpa, and they also have those kind of puffed up lenticels. And then finally, you'll want to look at pith, which is the central part of the twig, stores and transports nutrients, and can eventually be hollow, chambered, or be different colors depending on the year of growth or species. So honeysuckles have that hollow pith. Walnuts have this awesome chambered pith, and elderberries have different colors depending on the species. And so when you're surveying the trees and you're trying to figure out what species it is, I would say using pith is kind of a more last resort. If the tree is dead, though, feel free to crack open that twig and look at the pith. But if it's alive, I hesitate to do this just because they are pretty small trees, and it is pretty invasive to just like break off a twig and look through it. And so I try to save pith as like kind of a last case scenario of when I'm trying to ID species. Oh, and I did want to point out, it's not on here, but I might mention the phrase bundle scars. And so you can see on this picture, bundle scars are basically where the veins of the tree are going from the twig to the leaf. So they are the vascular bundles that are sending nutrients to and from the leaf. And those are right there. So like the dot smiley face, those are bundle scars. Okay, and finally, bark. I'll be super real with y'all. We are looking at trees that are maybe 3-4 years old. They are going to be small trees, and baby trees don't have the same type of bark as their adult versions. There are a couple species that I would note, and that is bur oak and cottonwood ridges. And so you can see on here, this is our bur oak. And what's so cool is that those ridges start to pop up really early in their growth. And then they turn into like the massive tree that a bur oak is, and it's super corky, thick bark. That cork starts super early on. So that's one of a good key to look at bur oaks, or when you're looking at an oak, and if it has these like bumpy guys on its twigs, that is going to be a bur oak. Similarly, cottonwood has these neat ridges that show up in their younger days. And again, once it grows into a big cottonwood, like you could see the really thick ridges on it as well. But yeah, they just start out as these little guys on the twig. And then finally for bark, I just want to make an extra note to take pictures of any bark pests you might see. So on this picture right here, you see those black little bumps. Does anybody know what those bumps are? Well, I give it away in the PowerPoint, but those are scale insects. So there's not many on this particular specimen, but I've seen them like cover a stem, and that's something we really want to take note of to see what species those scale insects might be attracted to. And I still have to look into a way. I am wondering, because you're able to like just kind of flick them off with your nail. Some of them are really attached on, but overall, those are like sap suckers. So they are removing nutrients from the tree, and something that we would like to remove and just keep an eye on. Yes, I would try at least. Yes. Good question. Good question. All right. So I've shown you a couple species throughout this presentation, and I'm just going to start out with a little pop quiz to see if you can recognize any of these species. And so, does anybody know this one? I would pay attention to the bark or the leaf.
Is it aspen?
Aspen. Not quite, but I'm pretty sure in the same family. Oh, it is in the same family, yes. Cottonwood?
Is it birch?
Cottonwood, yes, I heard that. Poplar, nice, nice. So you got that nice triangular leaf. I assume, what tipped you guys off on poplar / aspen? Ooh, the buds, heck yeah. Yeah, I will say cottonwood has these big juicy buds. I will say on the species that, or on the specimen that we've seen out in the field, have not had these glorious buds. What we've mostly seen is those ridges on the bark for the most part has been my calling card to, oh yeah, this is a cottonwood. Sweet, cottonwood. All right, next up we have a twofer species right here. So again, I would check out that bark. And these are two types of oaks. I'm kind of curious if anybody can guess this one off pictures. Or even the type of oak. Okay, so we got bur, right on. Can you say if it's left or right? Or which one's which? Ooh, and I even got a swamp in the, ooh, right on. Okay, so yeah, left is bur oak, and swamp is on the right. Oh my gosh, I love that. What tipped you off on those two types of oaks?
The leaves and then the terminal bud there that's clustered.
Right on, nice. Yeah, Definitely on the leaves. The leaf is huge for the oak, which is nice for us because the oak leaves stick around for so long. So even in December, we've been able to ID oaks because their leaves just stay on the tree. But bur oaks, yes, exactly, have that nice cello look. So it has this big fanned out lobe at the very top, and then it has this really deep sinus kind of right here. Um, and that is another like great way to ID bur oaks. Swamp white oaks will not have that deep sinus. It'll be a little bit more even. Um, and as Malia said too, oaks often have, actually, dear lady, how did you describe oak buds?
I said they look like they got in a traffic jam.
Exactly, yes. The buds at the end of the terminal buds of oaks just look so clustered and tight at the very top. So I love the traffic jam analogy. I will say swamp white and bur oak can be pretty hard to distinguish without leaves. Um, but I would say if you don't have any leaves, I would then look at the bark. And if one has some corkiness, that is most likely bur oak. If the other looks like it's peeling a little bit, that is swamp oak. Yay. Nice. All right. Any guesses for this one? Ooh, explain the corkiness. So how it forms or why it forms? Or like what it looks like?
Sorry, just yeah, what it looks like. I'm not really sure what
Yeah.
that means.
Yeah. I know some of this, the picture doesn't do it as much justice. Corkiness I would describe as just kind of the lumpy, like warty appearance, but in bur oaks it tends to be in like one kind of line. For hackberries, like adult hackberries, you'll see also like a warty appearance, but it'll be more worm-like. For swamp white or for bur oaks, it's just like raised lumps that kind of line up. Um, hmm. Does that help?
Yeah, a little. I think it'll be better to see it during the field session.
Yeah, I will say, even as somebody, so full disclosure, I actually came from like a conservation bio background. I wasn't in forestry. And so I've found for all this forestry knowledge that I've gathered, it has been best to just be out in the field and looking at trees. So if you didn't get any of these, do not feel bad. Like we're gonna learn a lot more when we're out in the field. Okay. Um, and I see it's like 7:55 right now. Oh, Allie, nice. Silver maple. Silver maple it is. Um, and I'll just say, so silver maples, for their leaves, they have this nice deep sinus that is like very characteristic of silver maples. And like you'll think of sugar maples and think of them as like more wide and like um doesn't have that deep sinus like breaking it up. Uh Silver maples just have these very thin lobes because of the sinus, and that is very characteristics of silver maple. I will also say, I always think of their buds. Their terminal buds to me look like red little crowns, and that's also been very characteristic of um, silver maple. And then I have one last one. I'm kind of curious if anybody gets this one. I love this one because the bud scar is just so round and specific.
Catalpa.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Linda. And Whitney. Nice. Yes, this is a catalpa. Okay. That was a very speed run version of what we'll be learning in the field session. And we'll also have a lot more visual aids and be able to look at the trees in person. So that is the end of our virtual session. Does anybody have any questions?
I had a question about the actual surveying that's happening over the few months.
Yeah.
Is that happening at just the Crosby Park, or is it all those parks that's listed on that app?
It is not all the parks listed on the app. but most of the park. So our main survey spots will probably be Crosby, Lilydale, Pig's Eye Archery Range, Mounds Overlook, Hidden Falls Regional Park, Willowbrook, and Spring Lake Park Reserve. So it'll be spread out, majority in like the Twin Cities area, but some down in Dakota County.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Will you have sheets that kind of go through all of the characteristics so that you can eliminate things that are not right? So like bud or, you know, leaves, are they alternate or across from each other and so forth?
Opposite.
So that you can just kind of go down the line with all of the characteristics that we're looking for so that you can come to a conclusion about what it is.
That is the idea. So I am a little bit between making a whole dichotomous key versus separating out by families. And then you can look at the like family, know some key characteristics, and then flip through that. So I'm still in the process of making our guides, but you will have a guide when you're out in the field.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Plant ID photo apps. In my experience, they haven't been super reliable. I think I've just had a hard time getting them to come to a conclusion about a species. I think they're great for like getting it to maybe like the family level or the general grouping of the tree. But I've had a hard time with getting it to species level, I'll say.
And then Paloma asked, do you ever let people go out and survey on their own time?
This is a good question. As of right now, I think I will be going out and surveying with everybody. I think in the future, possibly this fall, I'll be thinking about if survey volunteers feel comfortable enough about their ID that they can just go out by themselves. But for the spring, for sure, it'll just be in group settings and like kind of on that schedule. But yeah, I see that it is 8 right now. I could stick around after if anybody has any more questions. If you think of something before the next field session, feel free to email me at Mateo Park Connection. But yeah, thank you everybody for coming through tonight. I know it's like a random Tuesday night at 7 p.m. I'm so glad y'all came out to just learn about trees. So yeah, hopefully I'll see y'all March 28th at 1 p.m. And that is at Crosby Farm Regional Park. And we'll be learning more about ID and then conducting a survey as well. But yeah.
Can you be a little more specific about where at Crosby Farm we're going to meet?
Yeah, so we will meet at the parking lot by the marina. So we'll meet at the like pavilion area just right by the parking lot and then walk to the site together.
No.
Yeah. Right on. Well, yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.